Hey everybody, and welcome to the Startup Savant Podcast. I'm your host, Ethan, and this is a show about the stories, challenges, and triumphs of fast-scaling startups and the founders who run them. Our guest on the show today is Jash Mehta. Jash is the co-founder of Pop and Bottle, a company that makes organic, ready-to-drink lattes. You can find them on the shelves of little mom and pop shops like Sprouts, Wegmans, Walmart, and Whole Foods. Now, we're going to get into what Pop and Bottle is all about here in a few minutes, but before we do, I want to remind everyone to hit that subscribe button right there in your podcast app. It's a great way to help us grow the show, and guess what? It doesn't cost you a dime. And if you do, we appreciate your support. All right, now that I've paid the bills, let's dive on in with Jash of Pop and Bottle. Jash, thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Ethan. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, I want to get straight into something that I heard that is of great interest to me. Now, this is something about a truck on a highway, and I don't know the details of what happened here, but if my instincts are correct, this is one of those situations that really highlights what it truly looks like to be a founder. So, can you tell us the story of the delivery truck?
Yes. And I want to start by saying that nobody was hurt in this episode, which is why I can tell the story with a smile on my face.
Oh gosh, what a lead-in.
Yes. So I think in the first maybe 18 months of operating our business, so pretty early in our journey, I got a early morning call from our delivery driver, and his routine was to drive from San Francisco, which is where our production facility happened, to another facility in Sacramento with a truck full of product. And I got an early morning call basically saying there's a problem with the truck and the truck was on fire. And I honestly thought that he was joking. I thought that I thought it was a prank. And so I kind of laughed and was like, yeah, that's hilarious. Get back to work. Talk to you later. And then I look at my text messages, my phone files, my text messages, and it's a picture of our beautiful black branded Pop and Bottle vehicle, delivery truck, refrigerated delivery truck, basically on the side of the highway with flames and smoke engulfed in flames.
Oh, geez.
And I could just see our Pop and Bottle logo, which was this white logo penned on this black truck. And I could see between the flames and between the smoke, our logo up in flames, literally. And it was one of those moments where I was like, I have no skills for this. I have no idea what to do. I'm completely incapacitated. I don't know what to tell my colleague. I literally was frozen. And there was something almost eerie about seeing your brand literally up in flames. Where I was like, well, this is the universe telling me that the road ends here.
Oh, man.
And we'd taken so much pride in acquiring this van that we got branded. It felt like, oh, we really have a business now. Here we are. And it just reminded you that this game is really unpredictable. Everything was okay. We lost a vehicle for the product. We had to go through a crazy insurance claim. I learned a lot of new skills as a result, and I layered up on a layer of thick skin. But like I said, everyone was safe. Everything was fine. And it was one of those moments where I learned that wild things are going to happen on this journey, and you just have to pick yourself up and keep going the next day.
So people talk about, letting fires burn and that there are always going to be fires burning in your business. And I'm not 100% for sure that this is what they had in mind.
Hopefully not.
So let's say now you get that same call. Hey, the truck's on fire. What do you do now? Mm-hmm. What's the difference between who you were then as a founder and who you are now as a founder?
I think honestly, the only difference is that I built up so much resilience, as is my co-founder, as is our team. So what would have been a panic back then and a moment of immobility would now be, oh, okay, let's handle it. On to the next thing. It just, we've been through so many reps, luckily not any other fires, but we've been through so many reps of this in different versions that you really do build up a lot of resilience.
Right, like call the police, then stand back and take a video so that we can learn something from this.
Yeah, memorialize this somehow.
There you go.
Learning here.
All right, so let's circle back to the beginning then. I gave a short description of Pop and Bottle in the intro, but I'm sure you'll do a lot better job. What is Pop and Bottle?
Yeah, so Pop and Bottle is, in its simplest form, a healthful way to experience your daily coffee or daily tea. We create dairy-free, organic lattes and coffee drinks with no refined sugar, really thoughtful ingredients, thoughtful packaging, beautifully packaged. And we create flavors that are unique and that are really aligned with our customer.
So this may sound like an odd question, because it's a beverage, it's coffee, but I'm sure it goes deeper than that. So here's the question: what was the problem that you set out to solve by starting this company?
Yeah. So it goes back a little bit to our founding story. My co-founder and I, we were on this wellness journey, kind of personally, back when we were thinking about starting this business, where we were really trying to experiment with a plant-based diet, removing dairy from our diet. We were trying to remove added sugars and refined sugars. We were adding functional ingredients, and really we're just on this kind of personal wellness experiment. And one of the core tenets was removing dairy and was removing added sugar. When it came to, and at the same time, we loved coffee and tea. We loved to meet up for our daily ritual, get our daily latte. It was something that we genuinely looked forward to and felt like a little respite in the day, a little treat, a little thing that gets you going in the morning. And we were also busy people. So having something on the go that was easy to access, that you could grab when you went to your grocery store, that's something that we were looking for. And the little aha moment for us was we were trying to really promote wellness in every aspect of our diet and every aspect of our life. But this daily ritual, this daily latte that we look forward to every day, and we do it every day no matter what, didn't really fit the goals of what we're trying to do in every other part of our day in terms of our diet. And so the problem that we were really trying to solve is, could we marry this ritual, this daily delicious ritual, with our wellness goals? And could we still end up with a really delicious product at the end of the day, where you wouldn't really feel like you had to make a sacrifice? You could have, something tasty and rewarding and ritualistic, but that also met, your personal wellness goals.
Yeah, I guess getting together every afternoon and having a nice glass of water doesn't quite have the same bite to it.
Yeah, lots of power to you if it does, but for us it did not.
All right, so we're talking about a product that's fairly common now. Ready to drink plant-based lattes. But when you started in 2015, it was crickets. Which some people would see as being great. No competition. But others might look at this product and say that you're going into a completely unproven market. So what was it like to essentially build a brand new market? And what steps did you take to ensure that there were going to be customers for your product? Yeah.
So I'm not saying that we did this in the perfect order, but we got there eventually. I think there's some learning there that I'm happy to share. We started this brand and this product from a pure personal passion. I didn't have a food background or a beverage background. Neither did my co-founder. And so it was all passion and not a lot of experience. I think that probably helped us jump in the end. But our thesis to begin with was, if we create a product that we really enjoy and that fits a use occasion in our life, then it probably fits a use occasion in other people's lives. But that was the hypothesis. That's what we had to test. That's all we knew to begin with. So we actually started really slow. One, needed to do that learning, but two, we didn't have, had we been from a beverage background, I think we'd have known all the shortcuts to how to scale very quickly. We didn't know that, from licensing to production to regulation. We really didn't know any of it. So we had a steep learning curve ahead of us, and we needed to kind of take it at the pace that allowed us to bridge that skill gap. So that hypothesis started with, we like it. We think others will like it. As we started to test the market, get products onto shelf, we stayed really close to our customer. And our customer in this case is twofold. It's the grocery store decision maker, owner, buyer, whoever that is. And it's the end customer who's actually using the product. And, it's hard to get, when you're transacting through a grocery store, it's hard to get end user feedback, but it's absolutely possible to get grocery level feedback. So we stayed really close to our grocery customers. We would do deliveries ourselves. And when we delivered, we would check in with them. What was the feedback? How's it selling? How's the price point? And, it started to work. It started to move. We'd get reorders. The reorders would increase. So we started to get a little bit of early feedback that it was working. We didn't exactly know why. We didn't exactly know this is the customer that's buying the product, this is the use occasion, this is the white space. But we knew that something was clicking. And really what happened is we ended up kind of backwards backtracking and figuring out, okay, what is the white space that we're filling? Ultimately, we learned that our hypothesis was kind of correct. Our anchor customer is this, generally female, not always, but that usually the anchor customer. Obviously, lots of people consume the product, but this wellness-focused younger person who is looking at the coffee shelf and doesn't want hypercaffeination. They want moderate amounts of caffeine. They sometimes want their latte in a coffee form. They sometimes like their latte in a tea form. They don't want lots of sugar, but they still want a treat. They still want it to fill that treat, that ritual, and they want to be able to consume it every day without the guilt factor. And so only after getting lots of distribution points, we kind of reverse engineered that, oh yeah, this is the white space that we're in. And once we figured that out, and it took us a little bit to get there, but once we figured that out, we really turned that knowledge into a superpower of sorts. It was a realization that, we're really clear on who we're serving, how they're consuming it, and why they're buying it. How can we take that knowledge and really lean in and be really niche in a lot of ways in terms of we're not trying to do everything for everyone, but we're trying to do this one thing really well for this subset of customer who is a really meaningful and really powerful customer.
So this you've used this term a couple times now, white space, and finding the white space that you're in. Is this the understanding of the customer on an extremely deep level, or is this kind of like filling a pocket of the market that hasn't been filled? What do you mean when you say white space? Yeah,
it's a little bit of both. So if you went to the grocery store and you looked at the coffee section, you looked at the bottled or canned coffee section, at the time and still to an extent today, you would see lots of brown, lots of black, lots of messaging like triple shot, double shot, 2x caffeine, energy, bold, and the whole market in this section. While coffee is so broad, so widely penetrated, lots of exciting brands and lots of products in this space, it was actually kind of astounding that there was this giant gap. A beautiful brand that is inviting and accessible. So we use pastel, very intentional colors to communicate the delightfulness of the product. We don't talk about caffeination in any extreme way. It's very, our product is 1 cup of coffee in 1 bottle or in 1 can. So it's really not about the functionality of the caffeine. It's tea, it's coffee. The point being that when you're having your latte, it's not just about coffee. You might be consuming it just purely for the ritual, and that ritual could be tea, or it could be actually no caffeine at all. And then it's about wellness. And these product attributes just hadn't been applied to this space, even though this was a very prolific, very popular category with lots of different products. So the product was unique, even though it was a busy space. And the customer that it aligned with and still aligns with was very specific. So, I guess it's just put it another way. We made a very intentional decision to innovate and produce product with the values of this very specific customer in mind. And that was really the white space.
So it sounds like you kind of started or ideated this product, by essentially scratching your own itch. But once you kind of get out of that beginning phase and start collecting feedback from customers, you kind of have to generally move away from what you are looking for. And I mentioned this in a couple of other podcasts, and we've heard this a couple of different times, is that you can't fall in love with your own product, because then you'll be deaf to that feedback, because you think that, what you have is what everybody wants, even if that's not what they're saying. And so it sounds like you did a really good job of that by going to these customers and getting the feedback. So I want to double click on that a little bit. What did those communications look like? How did you find the people that were purchasing your product, and how did what were the mediums in which you communicated with them to get their true feedback on your product?
Yeah, great question. And like you said, this is a really difficult, and it's a really fine line, because you need a little bit of, you need a lot of belief, right? To put a product out into the market, to invest in it, to put your energy behind it. You have to believe that it's going to work. And when you're creating something new, the most likely answer that you're going to get from people is no.
Right.
So you have to have a lot of faith in that situation that my hunch is right, or the research I've done is right, or I'm creating something different, but there will be a market for it, whatever it is. But then once you get your product, whether it's your minimal viable or not, when you get that product out into the market, you have to then let go of that ego and make sure that you're being pretty intellectually honest about how it is being perceived in the market. And for us, we bought a selection of products to the market, and then we expanded over time. We made the decision that these core three seem very safe and familiar relative to what we were doing, and are very likely to be successful, versus these other two, which actually, if the three work, we can add these two later. So, it was balancing that risk. But how did we do it? And how did we get the data back from customers? One thing is we did take it slow. So we were very proactive in asking for data. Grocery stores, they don't necessarily, it's not a two-way communication necessarily. You
Sure.
sell your product to a distributor oftentimes, and the distributor then sells it to the grocery store. So in those early days, we were working directly with the grocery stores, but now we're working with the middle distributor. So we have to be really proactive with keeping that communication two-sided and keeping that relationship, like owning a lot of that relationship, and then really proactively asking for reports. At the end of the day, when you distribute through a distributor, through a grocery store, it is really difficult to get direct communication from your customer unless they proactively write to you, or you proactively seek it out. But they will vote with their dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And we looked at those reports really carefully. As much as someone would give us a sales report, we analyzed it. And then as we got a little bit bigger and we were able to afford it, we started to buy aggregated market data.
Okay.
So this would report on our own sales. It might also report on other brands in the space. It might also aggregate up to category level data so that we could really understand, okay, how are we growing? What's our distribution relative to others? What are our in-store velocity rates relative to others? Like, we sell 5, how much do they sell, for example? So you could really start to benchmark what success looks like, and also, how you are growing, how you are doing. To this day, we really rely on that data as we go into new markets, as we go into new regions, new geographies. We analyze that data really heavily, and we try and action. We make a lot of decisions based on data like that. What products to add, what products maybe to discontinue if they're not doing super well. So it's a constant iteration, a constant learning. So that was a really important kind of channel. And then the last one is, we use social media. And we used any and all communication through our website, through customers directly, through our direct-to-consumer channels. As much as we could use those as a direct sounding board or a direct line of communication with the end customer, we really made sure that we were looking at that communication carefully and trying to synthesize it into some insights. And again, we still do that today.
So when you were in those early days, before you were buying the kind of aggregated reports that showed your brand versus other brands, what were in those reports that you were getting from the stores, and were those on like a store by store, like location by location basis, or was it all of, X grocery store? Here is the data for all of their locations.
Yeah. So it's really a hot mess. It's not one simple, streamlined, here's a report that everybody uses and you can crunch it easily. It's in an independent store might have their own POS system, and they'll kindly give you some data based on that system, which is really valuable in those early days. We partnered with a bunch of independents who really worked with us on some of that insight. I remember actually one of our, there's a great health food store in San Francisco. It was one of our first stores that we ever launched in. Really wonderful buying team who genuinely was very motivated to just help local producers and natural products succeed. And I went into the store and had a conversation with them and said, can you give us some data from your system? Because I have an investor meeting and I need to put something together. And he literally printed out data of our sales from his POS system on sheets and handed me these physical sheets. So, that was like one example. Others would have other forms, and some would say no. It was a mixed bag. So at the independent level, it was really a variety, and we took what we could get. As we move into more of the chain store level, for example, Whole Foods or someone of that nature, it depends, but some of them have portal data where you can see and you can go in and download various cuts of your brand's performance.
Oh man, that would be cool. I'm a data nerd, so that sounds fun. Like, hey, just give me everything and let me synthesize it the way I want.
Yeah, no, it was super helpful.
So speaking of one-off data, let's then go to those final customer, those end user conversations that you were having. What did those conversations look like? I mean, were you just asking them if they liked the product, if they were going to buy it again? Were you kind of trying to put together like an NPS, Net Promoter Score, or what was the data that you were looking for specifically from those end users that you were contacting via, social media and those sorts of mediums?
Yeah, I think it was really a mix. Sometimes it'd be customers that would write in and offer ideas of what they'd like to see from us, or suggestions on improvement, or things that they were hoping for. Qualitative data, which we didn't discount. It was all helpful to see. Sometimes it would be that they would transact on our website and they would get an automatic email to complete a review, or we'd encourage them to complete a review by offering a discount on the next purchase. Something like that, where we really wanted to make sure that we were incentivizing feedback and reviews. So that was also fantastic to get. And then over time, depending on if we were launching a new product, we needed something really specific, or we were testing some branding terminology. We wanted to know, does this resonate? Do you understand this? Then we would take a nuanced approach, depending on what that was. So in one instance, we put together this grassroots Google form with a bunch of questions, and we emailed it out to kind of our DTC super users and again, offered them a discount code on the next purchase if they would complete the form. Really trying to find ways that were not too expensive to elicit, 2,000 responses or, even 200 responses in some cases. But of customers that we were really aligned with and that really liked our brand, that we could therefore rely on for some engaged feedback.
How do you identify people as a super user?
So we have a small direct-to-consumer presence. And so, it's as simple as if this person has bought from us with this frequency.
Oh, that makes sense.
They're a repeat customer, they're engaged with the brand, and they'd be a good person to kind of bring into our kind of feedback channel.
Gotcha. That totally makes sense. It's like if this person buys 3 cases a week, maybe they have maybe their opinion is weighted just a little higher than someone else's. But no, let's actually talk about idea weighting for just a second. In that, not all advice or suggestions is good, and we definitely shouldn't take it all. And as a founder, if you if you put the vibe out there that you're open for advice, you're going to get it. But so how do you suss out, which pieces of advice are proper to take and which are just kind of like noise in the signal?
Yeah. It's a great question. And I think that the best measure of advice that I kind of have in terms of kind of my internal metric is the advice specific to the individual or not? Because we've had lots of advice along the way of someone who might experience a product in a very specific way, or who is really interested in yoga and therefore thinks that yoga is a great market for distribution for this product. When it's very personal leaning advice or based on kind of their unique life preferences or whatever it is, we would typically discount it or at least question it. But if it's very clear, data-driven advice, then we would take it more seriously. And we've had, excerpts of both along the way. The other part of it is, and this is a little bit intuitive, so I don't know how to even describe fully how to do this, but over time, one thing that has happened with me and with our team is a little bit of muscle memory. I think in the beginning, when you're putting a product into the universe and you have no path ahead of you, you don't know what it looks like, you don't know, it's just such a gamble in so many ways. And, even if you take really measured steps, it's still a gamble. You do have to have a little bit of just Dutch courage to put it out there. As long as you're willing to iterate quickly. And it's important not to lose that, because when you're doing something innovative, there is really no path ahead of you. You don't really know what it looks like. So your intuition coupled with, a good team and all the things, that really kind of gets the ball rolling. But after that point, it's really important to look at the data and get the customer feedback. And it's making that judgment call constantly, and still to this day, that's what we're doing, because we don't always know that just because this historical product was a success doesn't necessarily mean that the next product we're going to put out is a success. So we're making that evaluation again and again.
All right, so I feel like I want to mine your brain for one more piece of customer advice, customer feedback piece of advice, because it seems like this is truly something that you are, excellent at. So scenario is, let's say I am a founder of a new CPG brand, a consumable. Something similar to the product that you've got, and I have the ability to get one question into the inboxes of my end users, and I want to be able to take the answers, the insight from this one question to make the most effective judgments and changes in my business. What is that one question that I'm asking to these users?
Yeah, gosh, that's a great question. I definitely want to think about it more. I'll probably come up with something better over time. But I would say one thing that comes to mind, especially if I'm asking a super user of the product who's already consuming it day in, day out, I'd probably ask them, if I'm allowed 2 questions, I'd probably ask them, what's one other product that we could develop for you that you'd be interested in us doing so? Because my mind is always thinking about innovation. We try to be innovative. We try to also really closely align with customers. And so that's really, really helpful feedback, as we think about that internally. And I think the second, especially for someone who's using it very frequently, is if you could make one change to the product or one improvement to the product, what would it be?
Those are excellent.
Sometimes, even within one distinct demographic, it is pretty surprising how much variation there is in terms of preference, in terms of use occasion, in terms of where they are when they use your product, or it's always surprising. There's always learning.
I ask for one question and I get a bonus. Thank you for that. Let's move on to funding.
You're welcome.
Let's move on to funding. You all have raised 3 rounds, and it seems like you've also been very successful in your fundraising. Can you give us a little bit of insight on what's your experience with fundraising been?
Yeah, I'll start by saying that I was completely new to fundraising when we started this journey. I hadn't fundraised before. I had no experience. I didn't have a network. I was, really a fish out of water. And so I've learned a lot in the years that we've been doing this. I'm still learning. Like you said, the environment's changing. The type of investors that we were going to in the early days, it's a very different cohort of investors that I'm going to now. So again, it's still a constant learning curve. But I think a couple of threads that have retained, of best practices, or call it what you may. And I learned this the hard way, to be honest, is you're really fundraising all the time. I thought that fundraising was this distinct period of time when you're actively fundraising and you put a deck together and you go out and you have meetings and you pitch and you do the whole thing. And I kind of time boxed it to, okay, we need capital at this time period. Okay, 6 months before that, I'm going to start fundraising, or 3 months before that, I'm going to start fundraising. The reality is that you're fundraising all the time. So it might be inactive, you might be relationship building, networking, keeping people that you're interested in updated on how you're doing, meeting them, establishing trust, providing information, letting them watch your brand, all the things. But some amount of cultivation should be happening really year round. And then, there's the active part of the journey. And at that point, if you do a really good job in the cultivation, in the networking, in that pre-step, then your active fundraising is so much easier, so much shorter, and more pain-free. I've been through a few rounds of this where I didn't understand that, and I understand that now. And one thing that leads to a successful fundraise for a founder and for a founding team is having choice. If you create choice for your brand, you're going to have better terms. You're going to have different investors, somebody that you align with, somebody you don't. It's going to be more brand aligned. It's going to feel better for so many reasons. When you're doing it up against time, you don't have a lot of choice. That can lead to some really difficult outcomes. And so the earlier you do it, the more thoughtful you are, who is the type of person or type of institution, whatever it is, that is the right partner for your company, the more proactive you are about that, it just leads to so much of a better outcome. And it's really hard to do that when you're fighting fires.
Literally.
And doing all sorts of things, literally, yeah. So my one advice with fundraising is carve out time for it all the time, and be really, really clear on who you want to work with, how quickly you want to scale. That's another thing that can be really misaligned. And investors' expectations of how quickly you're going to grow and when you're going to exit, if that's the plan. That needs to be really, really closely aligned with you as a founder and what your expectations are. Because misalignment in that department can lead to some pretty difficult conversations.
All right. So you mentioned that when you're kind of in the off season of, you're not currently in a round, but you're keeping tabs with investors and with your network and just making sure that you're never completely off the stove, but you're just kind of on a back burner. But I think that that can be really difficult for people because it can be tough to know what to put in an email that doesn't feel like it's, hey, look at me, I'm doing awesome. But it's also not, just like crickets. Or feeling like you have to reach out, but you don't have anything to say. And I don't think anybody wants to receive that email, and I sure as heck don't want to send that email. So can you give us a little bit of insight into maybe what you were putting in your emails that were going out to these investors or other folks that while you were in the off season?
Yeah. I think it can feel a little awkward. And for someone who's never done it before, I think that you kind of have to shed a little bit of that feeling and know that a good investor who is in the industry of investing will welcome that information, and that is stuff that they want to see. You're not interrupting their lives by providing that. So I think just the mental mindset needs to be that I'm proactively giving you great information about my brand and my company, and you actually want that information, and this is good for both of us. So I would say, like, there's one thing about the mindset there, and again, learn that. didn't necessarily do that instinctively. The second is, the form of communication, or what the content, I should say, of the communication, again, depends on what you do and what you make and what you're measuring, but that can be a really awesome PR article. That was, if you got a great PR hit, someone wrote about your brand, that stuff is always fun to share, because investors, it's human behavior. They want external validation. As much as they want to see all the internal things are working, they want to see the external things too. So hitting them with a little bit of internal and a little bit of external, that is a good story that you're building. So a PR mention, that's always fun. In the branding marketing world, if you've got any awards for packaging, for product, notable industry awards, we've had a few over time. That is, again, a great external validation, and can be nice to share. Internally, a really exciting win for us, and really exciting sales win. When we found out that we were going to go into all Whole Foods in the country, when we got an opportunity at Walmart, and things that were really exciting, and also meant that there was going to be a really exciting shift up in the brand trajectory. We would share those types of things. And then, like I said, the aggregated data and all of the forms of data that we collect, we monitor those and we track those quarterly. And we put together reports, and we still do today. And from time to time, when it made sense, we would share some of that stuff as well.
I think that is sage wisdom. And my initial thinking was, oh, well, what if we don't have any of those things? But you know what, founders out there, if you don't have any of those things and you're not currently fundraising, maybe you should go create some of those things. Go get a win. Go get something that's worth sharing.
And sometimes they can be really small. Those printouts from that one grocery store, that was for an investor. So even though it wasn't big by any measure, it was big for us at the time. And it was, another set of data that was helpful.
All right, Jash, let's move into my favorite question on every interview. What is your number one piece of advice for early stage entrepreneurs?
My number one piece of advice is really about team building. And I've learned a lot about this over time. I wasn't a natural recruiter of people. I've learned how to be. But yeah, my number one piece of advice is to be really picky with the people you bring along on the journey. Really clear on their role or what they'll be adding to the company, and not let, at various points of our business, I've just needed support, and so having the right team around me, that can be the difference mentally between being really excited to get up and go the next day to really feeling deflated and not knowing how to move forward. So the team really is a huge part of what motivates me to keep building this brand. And I think it's really, really important to be really wise and detailed about how to build that team, who you bring on the journey, and make sure that they're long-term minded people who are going to be with you through the ups and downs. Like I said at the beginning, number one piece of advice that I fully believe in is, when it comes to hiring, if you are not jumping up and down saying, yes, I need to work with this person, this is the hell yes, then you shouldn't work with that person, and it should be a hell no. Excellent advice. Very clear, very clear. All right. What is next for Pop and Bottle? What are we going to see in the next few months? Oh, yeah. We're at this exciting phase of our business where we have a good foundation of distribution. which we're, it's really exciting. We've worked for years to be in these big grocery stores across the country, and it's really exciting to have our product in the hands of all these customers in places that we, starting in this small way in this localized geography in San Francisco, I never once imagined. So it's making sure that we are really doing a good job of executing on all that business, that our sales are strong, that our partnerships are good. That's the stuff that needs to happen always. And that's the stuff that we're really focused on. But as I look forward and kind of the vision for the future, we're in this really exciting category of beverage, of tea, of coffee. There's lots of innovation happening. And we started out with this very clear kind of idea that we just wanted to make lattes. And as that started to work, we started to expand broadly into, okay, well, now we're going to make cold brew coffee. We're going to make concentrated coffee. And, that's just kind of this tipping point of how people can experience our brand. One thing that was interesting in the pandemic was that, people were less on the go, of course. So they're consuming a little less ready to drink and a lot more make your own coffee at home or buying a multi-serve and have it over the course of the week. And so for us, we wanted to make sure we serve that customer, our same customer, but in a different use occasion because they're experiencing it in a different way. So innovation is just kind of a piece that I continue to think about, our team continues to think about as we move into more markets, as innovation happens in category. So yeah, you'll hopefully see some exciting new products for us in the not too distant future. And we hope to also be in more markets and more geographies very soon too.
All right, well, I'm going to keep my eyes on those shelves for the nice Poppin' Bottle logo. And I hope everyone else does too. Jash, this has been a lot of fun. I just have one more question for you, and that is, where can people connect with you online, and how can our listeners support Poppin' Bottle?
Yeah, well, best way is either through our website or through our Instagram. Those would be kind of the two areas we're most active. And yeah, we, like I said, customer feedback is really, really important to us. So we respond to everything. We love ideas. If you have thoughts on what product you want to see from us next or things we could improve on, we're eager for all of that. So appreciate that. All
right. We are going to put all of those links and everything you heard today in the show notes over at startupsavant.com/podcast. And that is going to be it, though, for today's episode. Jash, thank you for stopping by. We really appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Ethan.
All right, that's going to be it for this week's episode of the Startup Savant podcast. Thanks for watching. What was your favorite piece of advice from this episode? Let us know in the comments. And if you could go ahead and hit the subscribe button, that'd be great. That's my best Bill Lumbergh impression. I hope you like it. And if you don't get that reference, go and watch the 1999 cult classic film Office Space. 20th Century Fox, that ad's on us. You're welcome. But yeah, hit that subscribe button. That was the point that I was trying to make. Catch us again next Wednesday morning with another excellent episode of the Startup Savant podcast. And until then, go and build something beautiful.
The Startup Savant podcast is produced by Truick.